black women create the men they complain about is because some of it's true. Some of it's true. Some of what the brother is saying in the article, and I read through some of it, and you guys can go read it. The website is negromanosphere.com. I'll put the link on my Facebook page and in the YouTube description if you guys want to take a look. Some of what he's saying is true, but I think at the same time it's very important to have this conversation in a way that is open-minded, that is fair, and that in which we are still decent toward one another, as opposed to simply trying to play the blame game. Because if you really want to blame somebody for the mess that we're in, I think it's a matter of blaming white supremacy. I really do. I think it's easier for us, instead of black men blaming black women and black women blaming black men, I think it's easier if we all get together and say, wait, we got to blame it on this racism stuff. But ultimately, that even comes back to us, because the question is, why are we allowing white supremacy to shape our thinking? It's okay. Again, the biggest myth about white supremacy is that most white supremacists are white. That is not true. The truth about white supremacy is that a large percentage of white supremacists are actually black. So where am I going with this? Well, when you talk about the raising of men, right? When you talk about fathers, hey guys, what's going on? I was freezing on the other platform, so I decided to flip to a different YouTube channel. So this is where I'm at now. So I hope if you can see me and you can hear me, give me a yes or no. Naima and Cam and Skywatchers, let me know if you can see me and you can hear me, so I can make sure I'm coming through loud and clear. I don't know what happened on the other platform. I apologize. And hit the thumbs up button too, by the way. Please do that. And so when you talk about raising these boys, I think it's absolutely ridiculous for us to really truly believe. And I understand. I know that sometimes because we're sensitive, we want to, if somebody says, that black boys aren't being raised right, and you raised the black boy the best you could, somebody saying that the men aren't coming out right, like cooking cookies, and somebody says the cookies aren't coming out right. It's easy to say, well, damn, I baked the cookies. So are you saying I'm not a good cook? Right. And maybe that's a good feeling, right? Maybe I can understand that, right? You're feeling like, well, wait a minute, like you're telling me that the boys are fucked up and I raised the boy. So what are you talking about? Right. Well, sometimes maybe people aren't saying that, the cookies are bad because you're a bad cook. Maybe they're saying the cookies are bad because you shouldn't have been cooking the cookies by yourself, right? You should, you're good at cooking steak, and cookies are a baked item, and your specialty is not baked goods. You should have had a baker helping you make the cookies. It doesn't mean you're a bad cook. It means that maybe cooking cookies isn't your strength, that maybe cooking steak is a little bit better for you. Do you follow what I'm saying? Do you get what I'm saying? Right. So I want to have this conversation because I think it's important, because y'all know as well as I do. I'm sorry, in terms of what's going on with media, in terms of the images of the black men that are being thrown out here, a lot of our black men are fucked up. We know this, right? We know that a lot of our black men are like off the charts in terms of like the disrespect for women. I see guys like I'm gonna tell you one celebrity example that really just flips me out is when I see where Lori Harvey, Steve Harvey's daughter, is messing with a guy like Future. Are y'all aware that, like, y'all follow any of that? I know I pay attention to everything. I'm always reading what's going on in the world. I don't sit in the little vacuum, right? And I see this and I'm thinking, as a father, I'm thinking, okay, number one, I would probably want to just murder everybody in the room if my daughter was messing with a guy like Future. Here you got a guy that has no sense of responsibility whatsoever, no sense of decency in terms of what he portrays to the world. Maybe deep down he's a wonderful guy. Maybe deep down, he's bought some, he's given some free cheeseburgers to homeless people, or he did something nice for his kids. I'm not saying he's not a guy capable of doing good things. I'm saying that he does not, in my opinion, that image, and it's him as the image, not him as the individual, but him as the image does not reflect what I see to be the kind of black man you could build a community on. You can't build a nation off of men that are going around impregnating women in every fucking state and then having a bunch of babies mamas everywhere, like literally like fucking fast food wrappers just thrown out all over the damn country. Like I'm not hating necessarily, but maybe I am. I'm not trying to hate, but maybe I am. But when I see that now, so I'm sitting there like, wait a minute, you're Steve Harvey. You're a hardworking man. You've got a relatively structured family. You've got this beautiful, gorgeous daughter who could date a lot of different men, and she's choosing this guy. And you know what this guy's all about. You know that he's trying to get in that ass of your child, get her pregnant, and pass whatever diseases he might have picked up along the way, and ruin her for the rest of her life. And this is the real. This is like really what happens. Like you might see all the swag, but fathers, we see all the stuff underneath. That's why T.I., got in that trouble for what he said about his daughter's hymen and all that. I think that was partly guilt, because T.I. sees the underbelly of how badly women get treated when you let raggedy Negroes get a hold of your child. Right. So now somebody says that's not his biological daughter. So maybe that explains it all. I have no idea. But I don't the girls in my house are not my biological daughters. But I swear to God, if one of them ever came home with a guy like that, I would literally say, get him out of my house. I'm never going to approve of this. I'm never going to make you think on any level that I think any of this is okay. This is not something that I think is going to work out, because if he's got a bunch of babies mamas and they're all pissed off at him and all this other stuff, you're setting yourself up to be pissed off baby mama number 6. Like seriously. And that's just what it is. Do you guys get what I'm saying? I don't know. I had a conversation with a young lady like that. She had some guy, some raggedy dude that she wanted me to meet him. She's like, well, I respect you. I want you to meet him. I want you. So I was like, okay, I meet him. I shake his hand. He shakes his hand. He gives me a little limpy ass handshake. Right. And it doesn't even look me in the eye. I swear to God, I instantly knew. I said, he doesn't have a father. I thought to her, I said, he does not have a dad. And he didn't. So my heart went out for him. I was like, maybe I can mentor him now, because she's in love now. And when girls get in love, they think they know everything. And you might be trying to go move in with R. Kelly, and your dads are sitting there saying, don't do it. But they're like, I'm grown. I'm an independent woman. I can do what I want. And you're like, yeah, I know that, but this is stupid. Like, I really want to go James Evans Jr. on your ass and tell you, Thelma, that this ain't the man that you need to be around. But because I can't do that anymore, because you will let white liberals convince you that my protection of you is somehow translated to toxic masculinity. There's nothing I can do except sit back and just let things happen, and then just wait for you to come back and call me at 3:00 in the morning because he's beating your ass and got 4 girlfriends and is doing all the things I could have told you that he was going to do. But yet, no, you didn't want to hear all that because you wanted to be grown. But so now you're grown, so you go make all these crazy decisions. But then 3-4 months later or a year later, when the chickens come home to roost, you suddenly want to become a victim again. That's very, very hard for people. That's very, very hard for people to digest. People that are smart black men, mature black men who've seen some things, who want what's best for their little girls, really, I think, are really frustrated by that. Frustrated by the fact that you have empowered the women, but you've sought to emasculate the men. You've empowered the shit out of women, but you've disempowered the rights of a father to be a man. To understand that sometimes you got to sit to the side and say, you know what? He's a smart man. I'm going to let a man be a man because I think he's got some things figured out that I don't understand. But you've been fed this narrative that says anything a man can do, I can do. Well, that's not true, because there are things that my wife can do that I can't do. There are times where she takes over, where I say, you know what? She's a woman. They got that figured out. I don't have no say in this conversation. I need to shut the fuck up and let a woman do her thing. When she's with her daughters and they say, get out, we got something to talk about. You know what I do? I get out. I don't sit in there and say, no, y'all need to have me included. I should be included in the conversation. My voice matters. No, I get the fuck out and shut the fuck up. So some of y'all women need to learn how to do the same thing. When men are talking, sometimes you got to shut the fuck up. Now, I hate saying it like that. I know it's going to be interpreted any old kind of way, and I don't really care. But seriously, if men are smart, when women are talking and women are doing women's work and women's business, we learn. Smart men know when to shut the fuck up. Well, some women don't know that. You know what I'm talking about? Women that feel like they got to be on every little thing, every little conversation. I want to be the man too. You wear the pants. I'm gonna wear the pants. Yeah, you do the. I can do it too. Shut up. Sit down and shut up. Respect your men. Seriously, I'm not trying to say every man's worthy of respect. Some men ain't worthy of shit. Some men ain't. Some men are just pussies. Like, some men are not worthy of your honor or your respect at all. And I'm not talking about those men, but you got some men out here that want to do the right thing. Attorney Nicole Compton, who's going to be in New Orleans with me this week, she goes to court and advocates for dads. And she tells me all the time, she's a brilliant lawyer. And she says, Boyce, you have no idea how many men I see in court that are crying and willing to give up every penny in their bank account just so they can see their damn kids. And the mother is playing games and being vindictive and then playing the victim, but being the predator at the same time. She's the perpetrator who's pretending to be the victim, right? And literally playing all these ridiculous games, and everybody's blaming it on him because somehow we are convinced that men are worthless and evil. And I'm saying that narrative has to go away. That narrative has to go away. Now, let's get back to the topic at hand. Hit the thumbs up button. Please hit the thumbs up button. If you're on Facebook and you got friends that need to learn some things, share this. Please share this link on your page if you could. I would really appreciate that. All right. So this article that Tierra KJ Williams put on her page, that written on Negro Manosphere, that says Black women create the men they complain about. Here's my basic conclusion. I'm going to give you the short answer and I'm going to give you the longer answer. The short answer is that has to be true. That statement has to be true in the sense that 72% of all Black children grow up in a household with one parent in the house. Does not mean that the father is not around, doesn't mean the father is not involved, but there's a big difference between the person that wakes you up every morning for school and feeds you and is always there for you versus the person who calls you every Tuesday or sees you every Christmas and every birthday, or maybe picks you up every other weekend. That's not the same thing. So the majority of our children are heavily influenced by their mothers. That's naturally going to happen. I had both parents in the house and I was heavily influenced by my mother. But if my father had not been there, then it would have been 10 times more than what it was. Right. So the statement that Black women create the men they complain about has to at least be partially true, because we know, again, the cookies are coming out of the oven. We know who was baking the cookies, right? There's no question about who was. Usually 72% of the time, the mama was baking the cookies. So when the cookies come out burnt, at least some of that responsibility goes on the person who was baking the cookies. But remember, just because the cookies are burnt doesn't mean that it's all your fault. Just because the cookies came out bad doesn't mean that you're not a good cook. So it's not a matter of taking it personally. Taking it personally is the easiest way to avoid actually solving the problem, right? Instead, another way to look at it is to say, okay, you know what? Maybe the reason the cookies came out burnt, maybe the reason that your son grew up to become a piece of shit, despite the fact that you did all you knew how to do to teach him about being a good man and a good person and also, seriously, you have a lot of mothers that raise their children in a wonderful way and their children do not grow up to be wonderful people. Well, I argue that part of the reason for that is because the mothers don't know how to be fathers. The mothers and the fathers have different roles. I'll give you an example. I know a lady who raised a son who turned out to be the biggest piece of shit I ever met in my life. I'm talking about grew up, took no responsibility for his actions, would go get locked up. His mother would have to bail him out of jail. He would go get girls pregnant, lay up in their house for as long as he could until he got booted out. Then he'd be homeless again and go back and live with his mama. Never amounted to anything, just became literally a complete menace to society, period. Complete menace to society. Just imagine the biggest piece of shit you can imagine, right? Future times 10. I knew this kid since he was little, and I saw his mother raise him since he was little. Now, here's what happened with this kid and his mother. Well, when he was a little boy, if he got in trouble, if he went to the store and stole a candy bar, his mother would pretty much say, well, there must have been a good reason why he stole the candy bar. There was no accountability. My mother would beat my ass. My father might punch me in the face. I'm just going to lay it out here. My daddy, toxic masculinity, my dad had some of that. Let's just keep it 100 right now. I love him, but he wasn't a perfect man. Vietnam vet, he went through a lot. He was a tough man. That's probably why I'm half crazy my damn self, right? That's why I view manhood the way I view it, because despite the fact that my father could be very mean at times, he also just sort of had a toughness about him that allows me to not be intimidated when people throw bullshit at me. Like I dealt with a tough man growing up, so I would define myself to be a tough man. I ain't got to pretend to be tough to know that I'm tough. I just know that I'm tough, right? I don't have to prove to you that I'm tough. I just know that I am, right? So here's my friend, right? I'm watching him grow up. I go to his house, right? Now in my house, if I made a mess, I had to clean up the mess. If my room was messy, I would have to go clean up my room. In his house, because his mother, I think, felt some guilt because he didn't have his father there. A lot of mothers feel guilt. He'd make a mess. She'd clean it up. And I'd be like, damn, your mama cleans up after you? You know, we'd be eating cookies. We'd run out of cookies. And he'd be like, mama, get some more cookies down here. I'd be like, damn. Like, it's almost like, bitch, give me some more cookies, right? Like I was like, man, you could talk to your mama like that? And every time she was like, okay, baby, I'll get you. I'm sorry, don't get so mad. No, mama, that ain't. Like he's screaming, hollering, throwing temper tantrums. And his mama is catering to him, right? Because she's a nurturer, right? She loves her baby, and and we go to school. We went to school. He would get kicked out of school because he's doing some ridiculous shit. He's always in detention or always getting suspended. Now, if I got detention, I got an ass whooping. If I were to ever get expelled, I might be dead, right? I don't know what my parents would have did, but I might have died that day. Oh, he get expelled. He liked it because he could sit at home and watch all the good TV shows that came on during the day. This is back in the day when the Jeffersons would come on and Good Times and all that, right? So he loved it. You know, the facts of life, learning the facts of life. So he really, I mean, I never saw a person go through detention and or not suspension like with such little stress in my life. I really was stunned by how he literally saw it like going on vacation because there were no consequences for his behavior. So as he got older and started dealing with women, he started dealing with women the same way he dealt with his mama, right? You know, when he was a grown man, you know, and as we got older, I started parting myself away from him because I didn't want to be around a person like that because he was getting into all kinds of shit. But then I was trying to actually do something positive with my life. And I remember, you know, every now and then I get a call from somebody saying, well, you know, he beat up his girlfriend, or, you know, he got that girl pregnant and then he dumped her. Or, you know, and I would watch his mother's reaction. His mother would always be like, well, you know, it's not his fault. It's because that girl was mean to him. Or, you know, he can't get a job now, and that's why he needs some money, right? Always an excuse, always an excuse, always an excuse. I didn't know nothing about that. You know, I had a household where my father, every time my mother was tempted to over nurture me, my father would step in and say, no, make his little ass go get a job. You need to learn how to work for what's yours. Right. Every time or when it came to like things like getting locked up, like I had friends that would go get locked up and then somehow their parents would always show up to bail them out. I didn't know that. My parents were like, if you get locked up, you're going to stay in jail. So you better not go get locked up. Or if you drop out of school, you're going to pay your own bills. There ain't no coming back home to this house. Now here's the thing. You're raised in a world where people think that's mean. People think that's abusive. People think, oh, that's not, you don't treat your child like that. Well, okay, fine. You keep enabling your kids. You enable your son and watch your son grow into a full grown bitch. Your son, by the time he's 28 years old, he's going to be walking around with a purse and high heels, whining and complaining every time something goes wrong in his life, but yet going around and putting himself into stupid situations because he's not thinking strategically. He's not processing things because he doesn't feel any consequences for his behavior. So here's the deal. You know, when you talk about, you know, what's in the dating pool, now you need to form the contrast here. So you got a 28-year-old woman who's been raised by her mother. She's had a role model her whole entire life. Like I watch how my girls in my house follow their mother. I pay attention. They follow behind her the way a mother hen will walk and have the little baby hens following behind them. You ever pay attention to that, right? And I watch how they copy what she does. I watch how she corrects them every step of the way. I watch how when they're scrubbing the dish the wrong way, she says, no, scrub it that way. Or when they're sitting at the stove and cooking and she's explaining to her, don't put too much salt in the beans or whatever, right? Like I watch all of that. And what I'm really seeing is I'm seeing a consistent stream of teaching and mentorship that this young girl's receiving that's going to guarantee that they're going to probably be somewhat successful. Seriously. I mean, the girls in this house they both make straight A's. They don't really get into any ridiculous shit. They pretty much follow what their mother does, right? But then you compare that. So that girl gets to be 28 years old. She's done everything right. She went to college, made good grades, got her MBA, started her career at Citibank, and she's making good money now. And now her friends are getting married or something or whatever, and she's ready to settle down or whatever. Now, the guy she's dating didn't have that experience. He also had a single mother, right? And maybe he has sisters who received that mentorship from the mother, right? But he didn't get that because boys don't relate to women like that. When I would see my mother do stuff with my sister, I would in my mind say that ain't got nothing to do with me. I paid attention to my father. I didn't pay attention. I mean, my mother was there. She had a certain role, but there were certain things my mother could never teach me. So he grew up without the father, and he's seeing his sisters do stuff with the mother. He's not interested in any of that. And then in some situations, this little boy was like my friend, the one I told you that grew up to be a piece of shit. He's being coddled and catered to. He's being kind of spoiled. He's being over nurtured. He's not experiencing any consequences for his behavior. So then he grows up and he discovers girls, and maybe he's a good looking man. He becomes a player. So he got a bunch of girlfriends everywhere, maybe a few babies and babies mamas everywhere. Maybe he gets to 28 years old. Maybe he finished college. Maybe he didn't or whatever. Maybe he's got a criminal record. Maybe he doesn't. Either way, he's in a position where he's not financially secure, maybe because his mother has been covering for him for all these years, right? Making child support payments for him. Does anybody know a grown ass man whose mother pays his child support or whose mother babysits the kids, right? Seriously, because he ain't around and he ain't doing what he's supposed to do, right? And in fact, that was my biological father. I noticed that his mother was stepping in where he wasn't able to kind of do certain things or was choosing not to do certain things. Doesn't mean that you ain't got trifling mamas out here, though. We know this, right? This we know. This is well established. We're not talking about the mothers, though. We're talking about the fathers. Just like last week when I was talking about Lizzo and the whole Mammy Jezebel stereotype, people thought I was bashing women. I said, no, we're not talking about the men right now. We're talking about the Mammy Jezebel stereotype. We'll talk about the men later. Now we're talking about the men. We're not talking about the women. So don't turn around and say, well, women do it too. Women are just like the men. I don't want to hear that. We'll talk about that on Tuesday. Okay. So here's the deal. So this guy grew up, no accountability, no responsibility, over nurtured, completely enabled in his ridiculous weak ass behavior. He gets to 28 years old. He hasn't really been coached, prepared, and mentored in a lot of cases. I'm not talking about every guy out here. We know it. There's no such thing as every guy does this, right? That would be stupid. But we're talking about, I want you to just think in your mind, think about somebody in here. Give me a yes or no if you know at least one dude who fits the description of what I'm talking about. At least one dude over the age of 28 who ain't shit, lazy as hell, ain't got no ambition, don't know nothing about responsibility, maybe got too many babies mamas, can't pay the child support now, right? Is completely incapable of taking care of a family, completely incapable of committing to anything that involves any sort of serious level of responsibility and accountability. Does anybody know? Give me a yes or no if you know at least one person who's in this category. And if you are that person, I apologize, but I'm glad you're here because maybe I can help you today. Maybe you can get the therapy today that you need. Maybe I can be the father you never had or the older brother figure, or whatever it is I want to be, because I'm doing this out of love. I'm not hating on you. I'm not attacking you. I'm not beating up on you. I'm just telling you the truth, right? A lot of us know at least one person who fits that category. So think about this. They're both about 28, 29, 30 years old. She's ready to move to the next level. He ain't ready for shit. He ain't prepared for shit. It's like, we're both about to run a marathon, this marathon called marriage and this marathon called life. And you've been training, you've been doing workouts every day. I've been on my couch eating cheeseburgers. I'm not ready for any of this shit. So a lot of times the men get to a certain stage in life and they're not prepared to be the kind of infrastructure, the kind of sturdy tent pole for the institution called the Black American family that they're meant to be. A lot of Black, and it's not completely their fault. Remember, this is not about blaming his single mother. She did the best she could. She did the best she could with what she had. I really want you to go back further, and I want you to look at white supremacy. And I want you to realize you live in a country that does not want the Black man to be a man. You live in a country that wants the Black man to be a little boy. They want the Black man to either be a little boy And in many cases, they want him to be a little girl. Right? They're not. This is not a country that encourages black men to stand up and be strong and be sturdy and all this, because they'll end up what's the word I like to use? Pathologizing it, demonizing it, labeling it. That's toxic masculinity, or he's mansplaining, or he's a sexist because he this and this. Well, you know what? I'm sorry, man, but the biggest revelation I came to as a man was when I realized I need to ignore all of that bullshit. Seriously, my rule for manhood is be a good person, don't fuck over people, and do what God intended you to do. I had to learn to make my own rules. Seriously, I literally was like 80-90% of the shit white people teach us about manhood is bullshit. It's wrong, it's incorrect, it's off base, it ain't gonna help us win. I had to write my own rules and say, okay, I'm going to pay attention when they say this, but when they say this, I'm going to give them the finger and tell them to fuck off. When they tell me to do this, oh yeah, I'm going to modify that. I'm going to change this. Let me scratch that out. I had to do that in order to know what it meant for me to be a man, to have my definition of manhood. So what's ultimately happening, and this is why you have so many black women in their 30s that are single, they can't find men that they feel are adequate husbands. It's because along the way, the men weren't ready for what manhood really entails. Manhood entails a different set of rules from what you get from white supremacy, and also from what you get from women. If his mother raised him to be the best man she could be, she did her best. But sometimes your best ain't enough. It's just the truth. It just ain't enough. I can't raise a girl to be a woman in its entirety. I don't know certain subtleties of womanhood that are required to be a woman. So what if a man cannot raise a girl to be a woman, what makes you think a woman can raise a boy to be a man? So going back to the original premise, do black women create many of the men they complain about? Yeah, they play a part in the process, right? Men play a part in the process, but it's an ugly cycle. You can keep going back generation after generation, and ultimately it comes back to sort of as a community defining what does it mean to be a man? What does that even mean? What does womanhood really mean? Most people don't even know. I know guys who never were around men, so they don't even know what a man's supposed to do. So a lot of men, literally, you'll see motherfuckers out here imitating rappers because that's all they see. They don't really even know what a man's supposed to punch a woman out, and he's supposed to be like, sit down, bitch, right? Is a man supposed to be like, is he supposed to be busting rhymes? Is he supposed to be wearing gold chains? Is he supposed to be like, what does a man do? A lot of men don't even know that. And I'm gonna tell you, I had a good conversation. I was talking to David Banner about this one time. David and I were talking, and I hope you don't mind me sharing this part of our conversation. Other parts I won't share because it's private. But I remember we were talking about the importance of fatherhood. And one thing David said that I laughed about, because I said, man, I did the same thing when I was younger. He said that when he would run into